There's a short story called All That Rises Must Converge. I can't remember the name of the author now. I think it's Flannery something. Flannery O'Brien? Flannery O'Connor? No, can't get it. But the title of the story, All That Rises Must Converge, as I understand it, is taken from Teilhard de Chardin, who I think was a Jesuit priest and paleontologist, and slightly controversial in both areas, as I understand it, because of his slightly radical ideas. He was the guy who came up with the idea of the omega point, which is this idea that at some point in the future our evolution, it's the model of directed evolution or teleological evolution, that we are somehow evolving towards some final point at which we become sort of singular and godlike, I guess. It's not a popular theory, and probably not a very good theory, but it's interesting. But this idea that he had, that the short story is taken from, this idea that all that rises must converge, is well, a beautiful phrase. I just love the sound of that phrase, actually. But I think it's also quite interesting in relation to some of the ideas that I've been kicking around to do with this image schema of knowledge that I have, to do with our understanding of different types of knowledge, and a map of our epistemology, if you like, being based on embodied experience. And in many cases that means a sort of visual experience, not exclusively, but quite often at least. That is to do with visual awareness and visual consciousness of the world. And what I've also mentioned in that context is how various entailments of that schema, of that collection of metaphors, map onto or organise our understandings of different types of knowledge and different scales at which knowledge operates at, that kind of thing. And the one that I know I've spoken about before is the entailment of height. So when we want to indicate that we have access to greater knowledge, we often use a height metaphor, because elevated positions, being at the top of hills, top of trees, in crow's nests, standing on the shoulders of giants, all those kind of things, are the positions from which we can see more, and hence the metaphor extends across. But when we want to indicate that we're in a position to know more, that position is an elevated position, vertically in the ascendant. And I think this idea that de Chardin is putting forward here, this idea that all that rises must converge, is a kind of related way of saying that, really. That's the way it strikes me as. That as one imagines oneself rising into the air, one can also imagine oneself having access to greater and greater swathes of knowledge. I have this sort of image in my mind of lots of people standing around this field where I'm standing right now, and we all rise together, and as we rise, our shared vision extends, and it's almost as if we are sort of moving together as these various points in this field triangulate upwards, I guess. So there's a sense, I think, in which this idea that all that rises must converge is an application, a very idiosyncratic and perhaps perverse application, but nevertheless an application of this spatial metaphor, and particularly the height entailment of it, that as one ascends, one has access to greater knowledge, the entirety of knowledge, if you like, the great totality of knowledge, because it's arrayed out underneath oneself, and one becomes the focal point, the unique focal point, from which one might view all of knowledge. And if everyone were to go through a similar ascension process, one would also arrive at that particular focal point. So there we would all be, all rising together and presumably converging on this unique focal point.